For more on what to expect in the coming days, let's bring in CBS News weather producer David Parkinson. So, David, we know that winds across California are fueling these fires. Can we expect these winds to let up anytime soon?
Yeah, I mean, this is as good as you're going to get. So what you were seeing up in Sonoma County tonight is the best wind conditions they've had in a little while, actually. The winds are fairly calm. Still, red flag warnings already up for the next wind event, which starts shortly, and we're still dealing with winds in the southern part of the state.
So what are the biggest concerns when it comes to this wind?
So the biggest concern with the wind really is just that it's going to keep ramping back up. And so as it does that, it spreads these embers so quickly. And so that's really the problem when we take a look at it. You can see so much of the state is covered in some sort of warning, whether it's a high wind warning or something otherwise. But here's the other thing to note. The humidity is really the problem. This is a live look at the humidity in the West Coast, right? So you can see all of the reddish colors, that's dry. And some of those beigeish colors, that's a little bit more moist air. You'll see that sort of come to a peak around the afternoon hours, and then you're down around the Los Angeles area. But you can see, look at all of that area north up by Sacramento, where you've got single-digit humidities. Any place where you don't see a color is single digits. And then on Wednesday, you can see that's now starting to make its way to the south. So that's really the progression of it. It's north to south. It's no humidity, so things are tinder dry, and then you have the wind to bring those embers around, and that's really your 1-2 punch.
And it doesn't appear that there's any rain in sight. I imagine that's just going to make it more difficult to contain these fires.
So here's the thing. You've got a big wind event that's coming for Tuesday into Wednesday for the north, and that's where you've got a critical fire risk and winds of 60 miles an hour. And then as you go to the south, then you've got winds up to 75 miles an hour. See that little red strip by Los Angeles there? Those are some really intense winds. And then as we click through all the way to Thursday, things really don't let up all that much. So it's a day and a half of really strong winds. So anything that's still going down there, that's why they had to get a handle on the Getty fire so quickly, because it's so populous, and once those winds kick back in early Wednesday morning, that's when it's really off to the races for them. But when you talk about the amount of rain that we're looking at here, there is plenty of rain in most of the U.S., but on the West Coast, there is almost no rain. And that's really the interesting thing. As we tick this is through Thursday of next week. So this is a 10-day rain forecast. And you'll see, yeah, there's rain in Idaho, but there's no rain from basically Portland, Oregon, south through the state of California. I don't think it's until the second week of November when we're going to be seeing any sort of rain in the Golden State. And so all that time, even if you don't have the wind conditions, because the wind conditions are the icing on the cake, but as long as you have those dry tinder conditions, things are going to combust really easily. And then if you have that wind, that's how things spread so quickly.
So despite the lack of rain, as I understand it, for the first time in 8 years, California is officially out of a drought. So shouldn't that be helping fire season?
Yes and no. And I say that on two fronts. One, the drought is sort of on a long range basis, right? It's is there enough water? And so there is enough water, right? There's plenty of water to put the fires out. There's two little caveats there. One, there is still a lot of drought in the Southwest. So Utah and Colorado and Arizona, it's actually amazing that they haven't had a worse fire season because they are in a drought. But in California, because we had so much rain this past year, that allowed all the vegetation to grow. All that vegetation then dried out, and then now that's fuel for the fires to really expand. So that's really the critical problem. Is you had a North Bay winter, north of the San Francisco Bay Area, where it was super wet in the Sierra, super wet, and so everything grew, even things that hadn't grown in years. You know, I went out there probably back in April, and I couldn't remember seeing the hills that green. And so all of that green has turned to brown because there hasn't been rain in months, which is fairly typical. But usually we get a little something in October, and unfortunately there's been nothing. There was a giant high in the Pacific Northwest, and as a result, that's why there's no rain basically from Seattle on down, and that's why it's so dry. So even though you don't have a long-term drought, you've got a short-term lack of rain, and that's your problem with the lack of moisture in the vegetation.
Right, such a complex set of factors. David Parkinson, David,
Really is.
Thank you very much.
Sure thing.